The most powerful man of the ancient age, Julius Caesar, was sitting alone in the palace in Alexandria, the capital of Egypt. Suddenly the door opened, and slaves brought in a large carpet. Caesar curiously ordered them to open the carpet. The sight that emerged from the carpet astonished him. The young queen of Egypt, Cleopatra, known for her world-famous beauty, sharp intelligence, and enchanting voice, stood before him in her gold-embroidered dress. This dramatic entrance was just a beginning. This woman would enchant the most powerful men of Rome, would have love affairs with two different Roman generals, would change the political map of the ancient world, and would finally, tragically choose death. Tonight I will share with you the fascinating story of Cleopatra the Seventh, one of history's most legendary female figures. The real story of this extraordinary queen, who ruled 3 continents with her beauty, intelligence, and political genius, is much more surprising and complex than cinema films. If you love the political intrigues, love stories, and power struggles of the ancient age, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. If you're ready, let's dim the lights and dive into the magical world of Alexandria, into the epic life of the last queen of the Nile. On a hot summer evening in 69 BC, a princess was born in the magnificent palace of Alexandria. She was named Cleopatra the Seventh Philopater, father-loving. Her father was Ptolemy the 12th. Who her mother was is not known for certain. Perhaps this uncertainty was the first seed of the mystery in her character. The world into which Cleopatra was born was both enchanting and dangerous. The Ptolemaic dynasty had ruled Egypt for 300 years, but their days at the peak were now behind them. The Ptolemies were descended from Ptolemy, one of Alexander the Great's generals. They were of Macedonian origin, but since they had lived in Egypt for 3 centuries, they now considered themselves true Egyptian kings. The strangest tradition of the dynasty was sibling marriages. Brothers and sisters would marry each other to keep the royal bloodline pure. Because of this tradition, there were constant internal conflicts, plots, and murders in the family. Cleopatra grew up in this harsh environment, learned at a very young age that survival meant suspecting even one's sibling. Little Cleopatra grew up in the palace's magnificent library. The Library of Alexandria was the world's largest knowledge center. There were 700,000 scroll books. Cleopatra spent hours there every day. She learned 9 languages. She spoke Greek, Latin, Egyptian, Hebrew, Arabic, Ethiopian, Persian, Median, and Troglodyte languages fluently. This way she could communicate directly with every segment of her people. Most Ptolemaic kings did not even know Egyptian, but Cleopatra was different. She wanted to understand her people. Her education was not limited to language. Mathematics, geometry, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, rhetoric. She learned them all. Her favorite subject was history. She had memorized the stories of ancient Egyptian pharaohs. She especially admired Hatshepsut, studying how this female pharaoh who lived 1,500 years ago stayed on the throne with courage and intelligence. Cleopatra tried to adapt this female leader's strategies to modern politics. When she was 12, she received her first political lesson. Her father took her to a farm in the Nile Delta. Farmers were starving due to poor harvest. Ptolemy told his daughter, "Look, these are your subjects. If they starve, they will starve you too. If they are full, you will be full too. A king's power is his people's power." Cleopatra never forgot this lesson. That same day she talked to the farmers, listened to their troubles, offered solutions. The farmers were surprised. It was unusual for a princess to take such interest in them. When Cleopatra was 13, she was introduced to international politics. Ambassadors came from Rome. Her father received them with great ceremony. Cleopatra stood beside her father at the ceremony. One of the Roman ambassadors asked her a question in Latin. Cleopatra answered in perfect Latin. The ambassador was surprised. But Cleopatra not only showed her language skills, she also asked questions about Rome's Egyptian policy. When the ambassador returned home, he wrote in his report, "This girl is dangerous, very intelligent." In 51 BC, Ptolemy XII died. According to his will, Cleopatra and her brother Ptolemy X would ascend the throne together. This was a traditional arrangement, but there was no harmony between the two siblings. Cleopatra was 18, her brother was 10. Cleopatra was experienced, her brother was a child. But Ptolemy had powerful advisors behind him. The eunuch Pothinus, General Achillas, and rhetoric teacher Apollodorus. The first year everything went well. Cleopatra established close relations with the people, tried to improve the economy, supported cultural projects. But her brother's advisors were plotting against her. They found her too liberal, populist. They also thought she pursued an independent policy against Rome. In 48 BC, open rebellion began. Pothinus convinced young Ptolemy, said Cleopatra should be dethroned. Cleopatra was left alone in the palace. Her loyal men warned her, "Your Majesty, your brother is planning to have you killed. You must escape." Cleopatra escaped from the palace at midnight. Together with a few loyal guards, she went first to Thebes, then to Syria. There, in exile, she gathered a small army. Her brother declared her a traitor, announced she would be killed if she returned. Just then, a great civil war broke out in Rome. The rivalry between Julius Caesar and Pompey turned into open conflict. This war between two generals affected the entire Mediterranean world. Young Ptolemy's advisors decided to support Pompey, sent him soldiers and money. Cleopatra, however, preferred to wait, wanted to see who would win. This strategic patience would benefit her greatly. In 48 BC, at the Battle of Pharsalus, Caesar defeated Pompey. Defeated Pompey fled and took refuge in Egypt. Ptolemy's advisors were in a great dilemma. If they accepted Pompey, they would face Caesar's wrath. If they refused him, they would disappoint the man they supported. Finally, they made a terrible decision. They chose to kill Pompey. As Pompey's ship approached shore, Achillas's men met him in a small boat, took him on board as if they would host him. As soon as Pompey boarded the boat, he was stabbed from behind. His head was cut off and presented to young Ptolemy as a gift. Caesar arrived in Alexandria a few days later. Ptolemy's men proudly presented Pompey's head to him, thinking Caesar would be pleased. But Caesar's reaction was the opposite. When he saw the head, he turned his face away in disgust and began to cry. Pompey was his former son-in-law and former close ally. He did not approve of him being killed this way. He showed his reaction to the advisors and said Ptolemy was responsible for this decision. Caesar stayed in Alexandria because it was dangerous to set sail in bad weather. He also wanted to collect Egypt's debt to Rome. He was hosted in the palace, but there was a tense atmosphere. Ptolemy's advisors were uncomfortable with Caesar. Caesar did not like them either. It was at this very moment that Cleopatra entered the scene. Cleopatra wanted to meet Caesar, but the palace was under guard control. She could not enter. To solve this problem, she made a very creative plan. She sent her most loyal servant Apollodorus on the mission. Apollodorus came to the palace with a large carpet, told the guards he was bringing a gift to Caesar. The carpet was taken to Caesar's room. When Caesar opened the carpet, he found a breathtakingly beautiful woman before him. Cleopatra had prepared carefully for that night. She wore a dress of fine fabric embroidered with gold. Her hair was specially arranged. She wore her most beautiful jewels. But her real weapon was not her beauty, but her intelligence. She began speaking with Caesar in Latin, gave examples from Roman history, made political analysis. Caesar was impressed. She was not only beautiful, but also a very intelligent woman. They spent the night together. Cleopatra explained to Caesar the real situation in Egypt, explained how her brother's advisors were running the country. Caesar listened and decided he would support Cleopatra. The next morning, Cleopatra appeared with Caesar on the palace balcony. The people were astonished. Their queen had returned. Ptolemy's advisors panicked, understood the situation had gotten out of control. Pothinus and Achilles immediately took action. They mobilized the Egyptian army, besieged the palace. Caesar had come with few soldiers, and now found himself under siege. But Caesar was an experienced general. Getting out of difficult situations was something he was used to. He prepared to defend the palace. Cleopatra also helped him. The siege lasted for months. Caesar's most dramatic decision was to burn the library of Alexandria. To prevent enemy ships from entering the harbor, he started a great fire in the harbor area. The fire got out of control and burned part of the world's largest library. Hundreds of thousands of ancient books burned in flames. This event deeply saddened Cleopatra because she had loved those books since childhood. During the siege, the closeness between Caesar and Cleopatra increased. Two intelligent people understood each other. Caesar saw how brave and determined Cleopatra was. Cleopatra also understood that Caesar was a true leader. Between them began not only a political alliance, but also a real love. When reinforcements came from Rome, the situation changed. Caesar went on the counter-offensive, defeated the Egyptian army. Achilles was killed. Pothinus shared the same fate. Young Ptolemy died during the war. Cleopatra had finally become sole queen. But now she was under Caesar's protection, which made her powerful but also dependent. After the war ended, Caesar and Cleopatra made the famous Nile tour. They traveled on the river in a giant ship with gold plating and velvet upholstery. This was not just a pleasure trip. Cleopatra was showing her people the new order. She was announcing she was on the throne with Caesar's support. But at the same time, she was also showing Caesar how rich and powerful Egypt was. The trip lasted 2 months. Thousands of people came on both sides of the Nile to greet them. Cleopatra was addressing the people in Egyptian. Caesar was responding in Latin. Two leaders came from different cultures, but were in magnificent harmony. At the end of the trip, Cleopatra learned she was pregnant. In 47 BC, their son Caesarion was born. Caesarion's birth changed everything. Now Caesar had a son, and this child was also the heir to Egypt. The union of two worlds seemed possible. Cleopatra was planning this. Caesar would be ruler of Rome, she of Egypt. Their son would unite the two empires. This dream was very big, but seemed realistic. Caesar returned to Rome in 47 BC. He brought Cleopatra and Caesarion with him. They rented a large house in Rome. Cleopatra was officially hosted as Queen of Egypt. Roman aristocracy did not like this situation at all. A barbarian queen being so close to Caesar disturbed them. They thought Cleopatra influenced Caesar, distanced him from Roman traditions. In 44 BC, Caesar was declared dictator. He was now Rome's sole ruler and was thinking of establishing a kingdom. Cleopatra supported this plan because if Caesar became king, he could marry her. Caesarion could also become Rome's heir. But Roman senators thought differently. They defended the republican order and were against Caesar's kingship plans. On March 15th, 44 BC, Caesar was assassinated at the Senate meeting. Marcus Brutus, Cassius, and other senators stabbed him 23 times. As Caesar was dying, he had asked, "Et tu, Brute?" "You too, Brutus." This assassination destroyed Cleopatra's world. She had lost not only the man she loved, but all her future plans. Cleopatra immediately left Rome. Taking Caesarion, she returned to Alexandria. Civil war had begun in Rome. The assassins and Caesar's supporters were clashing. Cleopatra had to wait and watch developments. But this waiting period was very critical. If she supported the wrong side, she could lose everything. 2 years later, the situation began to become clear. 2 men who wanted to avenge Caesar emerged: Caesar's stepson Octavianus, future Augustus, and Caesar's closest friend Marcus Antonius. Together, they pursued Caesar's killers and defeated them at the Battle of Philippi. Brutus and Cassius were killed. Revenge had been taken. After the victory, the Roman world was divided in 2. Octavianus took the west, Antonius the east. Egypt remained in Antonius's region, so Cleopatra had to come to terms with him. Antonius summoned her to the city of Tarsus in Cilicia. This summons was both invitation and threat. Cleopatra had to go, but how she went was very important. Cleopatra prepared a magnificent show for this meeting. She came on a giant gold-plated ship. The ship was decorated like Aphrodite's vessel. She herself was dressed like Aphrodite, with gold fabrics, pearls, jewels. On deck were dozens of servants, musicians, and dancers. When the ship approached Tarsus harbor, a large crowd gathered. Everyone wanted to watch this magnificent sight. Antonius had come to meet her, but was astonished by this display. This was not just a queen, but like a real goddess. Cleopatra had calculated very well. Antonius was a man who loved show, who loved luxury. First impression was very important, and Cleopatra had made a perfect entrance. In the evening, Cleopatra hosted Antonius on her ship. The ship's interior was furnished like a palace. Dining tables were set with gold dishes. Everywhere was lit with candles. The food included the most distinguished examples of world cuisine. Antonius had not seen such luxury. Cleopatra was a woman who was both beautiful and rich and very intelligent. Like Caesar, Antonius fell under her spell. Antonius and Cleopatra went to Alexandria. The winter they spent together here was very different from Rome. Alexandria was the center of luxury and culture. Antonius relaxed here. Cleopatra showed him Egyptian life. They toured ancient temples, traveled on boats on the Nile, organized feasts in the palace. Between them was not only political alliance, but also real love. Cleopatra met a different man than Caesar. Caesar was a disciplined, calculating, cool-headed leader. Antonius was more emotional, warmer, livelier. He was a man brave in war, fun in peace. Cleopatra liked this difference. In 40 BC, their twins were born, Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene. Later, they had another son, Ptolemy Philadelphus. Cleopatra was now mother of 4 children, and through her children was heir to both Caesar's and Antonius's legacy. These children were at the center of her plans for the future. But Antonius had a wife in Rome, Octavianus's sister Octavia. This political marriage was ensuring peace between 2 rivals. Antonius returned to Rome in 40 BC and spent several years with his wife. Cleopatra waited patiently, knew he would return. Because without Egypt's wealth, Antonius could not conduct eastern campaigns. In 36 BC, Antonius returned. He was now not just a man in love, but a ruler planning to establish an empire in the east. Cleopatra supported this plan, even took it further. Together, they would establish a great eastern empire, would rival Rome. In 34 BC, a great ceremony was held in Alexandria. In this event, known as the donation ceremony, Antonius and Cleopatra distributed large lands to their children. Caesarion was given Egypt and Cyprus, Alexander Helios Armenia, and Media, Cleopatra, Selene Libya, and Cyrenaica, Ptolemy, Philadelphus, Syria, and Cilicia. This was not just symbolic, it was a real empire plan. In this ceremony, Cleopatra declared herself Queen of Kings. Antonius also became Master of the East. The 2 sat together on golden thrones. Their children also sat on small thrones beside them. This sight was a great challenge to Rome. When Octavianus received this news, he went mad with anger. Now war between 2 former friends was inevitable. Octavianus started the propaganda war. He accused Antonius of betraying Rome, claimed he had fallen under Cleopatra's spell, now defended not Rome, but Egypt. He also portrayed Cleopatra as an enemy of Rome, witch, immoral woman. This propaganda campaign was very effective. The Roman people turned against Antonius. In 32 BC, Octavianus had Antonius's will read in the Senate. In the will, Antonius had written that he wanted to be buried not in Rome, but in Alexandria. This angered the Roman people very much. How could a Roman want to be buried in barbarian lands? The Senate stripped Antonius of all his offices, declared war on him. Actually, war was declared not on Antonius, but on Cleopatra. Because Octavianus did not want to give the appearance of civil war. The external enemy was the Egyptian queen. Antonius was just a victim who had fallen under her spell. This propaganda tactic was very clever, because it united the Roman people. In 31 BC, the 2 sides faced each other in Greece. Antonius and Cleopatra positioned themselves at Cape Actium with a large navy. Octavianus also set up his army across. This was not just a military war, but a clash of 2 different worldviews. On one side was Roman tradition, on the other, Eastern luxury. Cleopatra participated in the war on her giant gold-plated ship. This was her strategic mistake, because Roman propaganda used it. Look, a woman is declaring war on Rome. The Battle of Actium was fought at sea. Both sides had strong navies. When the battle began, Cleopatra's ship suddenly left the battlefield. Antonius followed her. Why this escape occurred is debatable. Perhaps Cleopatra understood the battle was lost and decided to flee. Perhaps they had planned in advance. If they lost, they would withdraw to Egypt and reorganize. But the result was disastrous. When Antonius's army saw their commander abandon them, they dissolved. Octavianus won an easy victory. After returning to Egypt, Antonius and Cleopatra prepared for the final battle. But morale was broken. Octavianus was approaching. Allies were abandoning them one by one. Antonius fell into depression, turned to drink. Cleopatra put her final plan into action. If necessary, she would choose death. In 30 BC, Octavianus entered Alexandria. Antonius tried to fight one last battle, but his army deserted him. Desperate, Antonius turned to his sword, committed suicide by stabbing it into his stomach. Before dying, he wanted to be taken to Cleopatra. He breathed his last breath in the arms of the woman he loved. Cleopatra was now alone. Octavianus wanted to capture her, would use her as a display object in his triumph parade in Rome. But Cleopatra would never agree to this. She chose death over captivity. Cleopatra prepared to play her last card. She met with Octavianus, tried to negotiate with him. She was even thinking of sacrificing her own life to save her children's lives. But she understood Octavianus's real intentions. He would take her to Rome, humiliate her before the people, then kill her. That night, Cleopatra made her final preparations. She wore her most beautiful clothes, put on her jewels, arranged her hair carefully. Her servants Iris and Charmian were with her. The three women together made the final decision. They would choose an honorable death. Cleopatra's method of death is debatable. According to traditional story, a cobra snake hidden in a basket of figs bit her. The cobra was considered sacred in Egypt, represented pharaohs. This death method was symbolically perfect. The last Egyptian queen was being immortalized by the sacred serpent. But modern historians suggest other possibilities. Perhaps she used poison, perhaps a needle, perhaps another method. What is important is this: Cleopatra chose her own death, kept control until her last moment. When Octavianus entered the room, he found her on her golden bed, in queen's clothing, as if sleeping. With Cleopatra's death, the Ptolemaic dynasty ended. The 3,000-year Egyptian kingdom became history. Octavianus had Caesarion killed because as Caesar's son he posed a danger. Egypt became a province of Rome. Its ancient culture began to slowly be erased. But Cleopatra's story continued to live. Each age reinterpreted her anew. Her love stories were real, but always part of political calculation. She was not just a woman in love, but an intelligent leader trying to save her country. Until her last moment, control belonged to her. Even her death was her own choice, and this attitude made her legendary. So, friends, this is the fascinating story of the last queen of the Nile, Cleopatra VII. Her story is a story of love, power, intrigue, and great losses, but also a story of how a woman struggled in a man's world. Dear viewers, I hope you enjoyed this epic story of Cleopatra. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Which historical character's story do you want to hear in the next video? Write in the comments. Take care until then.